The crisis we pretend is normal. Okay, so here's the thing. If housing felt harder every year, it's not your imagination. Wages moved like a slow train, housing took the express. Over the last 2 decades, home price-to-income ratios in major U.S. metros pushed beyond 6, 8, even double digits. Rents followed. Nationally, renter households now spend a share of income on shelter that would have been alarming a generation ago. Nearly half of renters are cost-burdened, over 30% of income, and a growing slice are severely burdened, crossing 50%. Most people think this is just a coastal story. It isn't. Sun Belt markets that once promised affordability saw prices leap after 2020. Institutional buyers and remote work bidders layered onto tight inventories, and suddenly, starter home was more museum piece than market segment. Builders chased higher margin product because the math forced them there. Entry-level formats, small lots, duplexes, courtyard apartments, got zoned out decades ago, so even when demand screams for them, permits say no. Now homelessness, you'd expect record construction spending to ease it. Instead, we got a perverse pairing. Rising construction costs, rising rents, rising homelessness. When the bottom of the market collapses, every shock, job loss, medical bill knocks more people out. Emergency rooms, police responses, and shelters backfill what stable housing would have prevented. That's not a moral lecture. It's a budgeting fact cities quietly admit while cutting checks. Here's where it gets interesting. The standard explanation says, it's just supply. Build more and prices fall. Supply matters. But when zoning locks capacity, financing demands high returns, and big capital treats homes like a yield product, adding a few thousand units into a million-unit shortage barely moves price. After 2008, firms like Invitation Homes and American Homes for Rent assembled single-family portfolios at scale. Cheap capital and software gave them regional pricing power. Build-to-rent subdivisions grew because spread and speed pencil better when you can standardize, fee stack, and refinance against rising values. Everything changes when you meet the couple who did everything right. 2 incomes, good credit pre-approved. They toured for months, waived contingencies, wrote letters to sellers. They still lost to an all-cash bid, sometimes from an LLC that planned light rehab and a quick rent-up. That's not a villain story, it's incentives. Time kills deals, so speed wins, cash wins. And when a region's comps rise, appraisals validate the next jump. Now the macro picture. Mortgage rates whipsawed, but prices didn't crater because supply elasticity is low. Years of minimum lot sizes, parking mandates, height caps, and discretionary approvals baked scarcity into the code. Permit timelines stretch into seasons, sometimes years. If you're a developer facing legal risk, interest carry, and design revisions, you move up market to survive. That's why luxury seems to sprout everywhere. The margin is a hedge against 1,000 paper cuts. But here's the real secret. We've normalized a system where housing must both be affordable and make owners rich. Most households' net worth lives in their home. That means any policy perceived to flatten prices looks like an attack on retirement. Local governments depend on property assessments to fund schools and services, so they're nervous too. Banks' collateral models and mortgage-backed securities, pricing assumes stable to rising values. Every layer pushes towards scarcity and appreciation, not broad access. You probably think, so we're stuck. Not entirely. There's a place that chose different incentives a century ago and never let go. Vienna treated housing like a public utility, nice, dignified, built to last, rather than a speculative ladder. They didn't try to outbid the market every year. They built outside it, at scale, with permanent rules that make rent a cost, not a casino chip. Before we jump there, let's close one loop. The US did build lots, but we built in formats and locations that lock in car dependency, long commutes, and high operating costs for households. We fragmented approvals so every project is a mini-election. We tied school quality to assessed values, then told families to buy into opportunity. We allowed a meeting at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday to delay 1,000 homes for a year, then wondered why rents rose. Now this is important because once you understand the constraints, the Vienna story stops sounding like a fairy tale and starts sounding like an operating system choice. They picked cost rent over asset inflation. They funded maintenance so buildings don't decay between grants. They mixed income so there's no stigma, and they kept tenures long so communities could actually form. One last micro story. A renter hits a rent hike they can't absorb. They move 25 miles out, then 40. Commute hours balloon, childcare cracks, job performance slips. The landlord wasn't evil, the spreadsheet was. That's our system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Reward scarcity, push costs onto households, and call it the market. There's another way. Vienna proved it a century ago. Let me show you how they built it, and why, in America, the very institutions that hold our wealth would fight it. Read Vienna, how a city made housing a public utility. To see the alternative, jump to Vienna right after World War I. The city was overcrowded, unhealthy, and politically ready to try something bold. In 1919, the Social Democrats won a mandate and used it to treat housing like water or electricity, a public utility that delivers stability, not a casino chip for speculation. That period is nicknamed Red Vienna, not because everything was nationalized, but because the city set rules that aligned private effort with public goals over decades, not quarters. Here's what actually happens when a city commits like that. First, they declared a municipal housing mandate: quality, permanence, dignity. No barracks, no temporary huts. They built courtyard blocks and human-scale streets that invited daily life into shared spaces. The most famous symbol is Karl Marx Hof, a kilometer-long complex completed in 1930 with generous courtyards, arches, and light. It wasn't an architectural flex for the elite. It was a signal that working families deserved lasting buildings with beauty baked in. If you're going to live somewhere for decades, the walls shouldn't apologize for existing. But design without social policy doesn't change outcomes, so they rewired who got to live there. Most people think public housing means deep poverty concentrations. Vienna refused that trap. They aimed for mixed income allocation from the start, broad eligibility bands, not just the very bottom. That does two things. It sidesteps stigma: you're not in the projects, you're in a normal building with neighbors across incomes, and it stabilizes the rent roll so maintenance and services are funded consistently. When your tenant base looks like your city, management stops lurching between crisis and neglect. Amenities weren't an afterthought, they were the point. Many complexes included kindergartens, laundries, clinics, and libraries on site. That integrated services play mattered because housing costs aren't just rent. Childcare, transit time, and basic errands eat budgets too. By embedding everyday needs into the block and connecting neighborhoods to reliable tram and rail lines, Vienna lowered the total cost of living. You can afford more of life when you don't have to own 2 cars or cross town for a doctor. Now let's talk money, because ideals don't pour concrete. Vienna built a funding engine that didn't depend on booms. The city levied dedicated housing taxes, progressive, visible, and earmarked, on things like luxury residences, car ownership, and household servants. That revenue didn't vanish into a general fund. It flowed directly into construction and maintenance. They also assembled and banked land. When the city owns sites, it doesn't have to outbid speculators every cycle, and it can set ground leases that keep long-term control. That land strategy is boring on purpose. It's how you break the buy high, sell higher loop that wrecks affordability. Who builds and manages the housing matters too. Vienna leaned on municipal companies and limited profit developers that are legally constrained. These entities operate under cost-rent principles. Rents reflect what it costs to build and maintain over time, not what a frenzied market will pay this summer. Surpluses are reinvested into upkeep and new projects, not skimmed as windfall profits. The result is a portfolio that doesn't decay waiting for grants because depreciation is planned from day one. Roofs get replaced when they need to, elevators get modernized, and courtyards stay clean. You're not patching a crisis, you're running a utility. Tenure is the quiet superpower. When leases aren't a revolving door and eviction isn't an investment strategy, people form roots. Kids can attend the same school longer. Elderly residents stay near services and neighbors who know them. Turnover costs drop, which feeds back into stable operating budgets. And because there's no equity jackpot from flipping, there's no incentive to churn tenants or play vacancy games. Stability becomes the default, not a luxury. Quality architecture wasn't charity, it was policy. The city commissioned respected architects, set standards for light, ventilation, and shared space, and repeated winning patterns. You can walk block after block and see courtyards that invite children to play, stairwells that feel safe, and facades that age gracefully. When buildings are nice, mixed income is politically sustainable. People defend places they're proud of. Now you might be thinking, that's a different century, different politics. Fair, but notice the mechanics. Dedicated revenue beats program-by-program appropriations. Public land breaks bidding wars. Limited profit rules keep rents tethered to costs. Mixed income allocation avoids stigma and fiscal fragility. And integrated amenities reduce the hidden costs that blow up household budgets. This isn't nostalgia, it's a system design that still runs. Everything changes when you recognize the contrast with US assumptions. We built for exit, refinance, sell, syndicate, so pro formas rely on appreciation. Vienna built for permanence, hold, maintain, reinvest, so pro formas rely on predictable operating cash and patient capital. We let zoning carve cities into exclusionary enclaves, then fought each building one at a time. Vienna standardized formats and approvals, then scaled. One last point before we cross back over the Atlantic. Vienna's model survived recessions and political swings because it aligned with everyday self-interest: secure rents, decent buildings, and services nearby. When a middle-class family can live comfortably without mortgaging their future, they don't clamor to dismantle the system. That political insulation is part of the design. It's hard to campaign against the courtyard where your kid learned to ride a bike. So yes, Vienna treated housing like a utility. They chose cost over speculation, permanence over churn, and dignity over triage. That's the blueprint. The challenge comes when you try to plug that blueprint into America's operating system, where home values are the retirement plan, the school funding base, and the banking sector's collateral, all at once. The money engine: taxes, land, and permanent nonprofit ownership. Let's open the hood on Vienna's housing engine, because the secret isn't charity. It's cash flow, ownership, and rules that don't leak value. 3 pillars make it work: dedicated taxes, public land, and builders who can't privatize the upside. Start with taxes. Vienna didn't wait for housing money to appear in a budget fight. They created it. The city levied progressive, earmarked revenues, a housing construction tax paid by residents and employers, plus luxury surcharges on things like large apartments, multiple car ownership, and domestic servants back in the day. The point wasn't punishment, it was alignment. If you enjoyed higher-end consumption, a slice funded the common platform: stable, well-built homes. Critically, this revenue was dedicated. It didn't disappear into a general fund or swing with political seasons. Earmarking insulated the pipeline so architects, contractors, and maintenance crews could count on multi-year cash, not one-off grants. Now land: anyone who's ever pro-formed a project knows site cost can blow affordability before you even sharpen a pencil. Vienna's answer was to bank land in good times and bad. The city assembled sites, held them, and leased them long-term on public interest terms. When you control the dirt, you control the deal. You can pick the builder, set design standards, and lock affordability without paying speculative premiums. And because the ground lease extends over decades, the city retains stewardship. That prevents the classic US pattern where a subsidized project hits year 15, exits restrictions, and affordability walks out the door. Land and taxes don't pour concrete by themselves. You need builders whose incentives don't drift toward flipping. Vienna relies on municipal companies and limited profit housing associations. Limited profit isn't a vibe, it's a legal status. These entities operate under a cost-rent regime. Rents are pegged to actual development and operating costs, plus a modest, regulated return to keep the lights on and fund reserves. They can't privatize surpluses, they recycle them into upkeep and new construction. That's the operational heart of permanence. When the boiler fails in year 27, there's a sinking fund, not a pleading letter to a legislature. Here's what actually happens when you run housing like this. Instead of underwriting to exit, RIFI assumptions, cap rate compression, condo sellout, you underwrite to hold. You plan depreciation in the budget. You schedule facade rehab and elevator modernization. You set aside for playground updates and energy retrofits. The rent roll stabilizes because tenant churn is low and mixed income allocation balances cash flows. And because you're not extracting value to pay distant investors, your cost base is lower over the asset's life. The governance matters too. Vienna doesn't pretend that nonprofits are automatically saints. They regulate them. Limited profit associations face audits, transparency requirements, and caps on executive pay tied to portfolio size. Tenants have representation in building councils that review maintenance, house rules, and budgets. That feedback loop keeps service quality high and prevents the quiet decay that haunts underfunded public housing elsewhere. When residents can flag problems early and managers have the budget to fix them, small issues don't become capital crises. Design and procurement support the math. The city uses pattern books and standardized components where it makes sense, repeating proven building types that hit daylight standards, courtyard proportions, and acoustics. Standardization doesn't mean monotony. It means predictable costs and fewer change orders. That predictability lets limited profit developers commit to tighter rent targets without praying for a miracle on bids. You might be thinking, what about new supply pressure? Don't these rules slow things down? Actually, the opposite. Because sites are pre-assembled, approvals follow clear criteria, and the financing pipeline is permanent, cycle time is faster than fighting every project through discretionary hearings. When a city knows it can place, say, 3,000 units a year at cost rent, it can coordinate trades, apprenticeships, and factory-built elements to de-risk timelines. And because the land is public, you can embed non-revenue uses, childcare rooms, clinics, community kitchens, without wrecking the pro forma. Let's talk numbers in human terms. A cost rent unit might launch at a rent 20–40% below a comparable market rate new build, not because someone waved a wand, but because three inputs collapsed: no land speculation, non-extractive financing, and zero fee stacking. You're not hiding junk fees in amenities. You're not funding a developer profit that depends on a 5% annual price climb. You're paying for masonry, elevators, care workers, and a maintenance crew that knows the building. Everything changes when you compare this to the US default. Our construction finance assumes appreciation. Banks underwrite to stabilize value that rises. Equity expects an exit. Debt funds an REIT's price for yield growth. That's why so many projects only pencil at the top of the market, and why affordable deals require layers of tax credits, soft loans, and timing gymnastics. Vienna simplified the stack by changing the owner's goals. No exit, no flip, no harvest event, just durable operating cash and reinvestment. There's a cultural piece here, but it's enforced by contracts, not vibes. Ground leases lock purpose. Limited profit charters lock use of surplus. Dedicated taxes lock funding. Tenant councils lock accountability. Put those together and you get a flywheel. Predictable revenue supports good maintenance. Good maintenance supports political support. Political support protects the taxes and land bank. The land bank keeps costs low. Low costs keep rents stable. That's the money engine. It's boring, deliberate, and extremely hard to dislodge once people rely on it. And it's exactly the kind of engine America resists, because our housing finance is designed to reward appreciation, not permanence. America's religion: your home must make you rich. Let's talk about the American operating system, because this is where Vienna crashes. In the US, your home isn't just shelter, it's your balance sheet. For the typical household, home equity is the primary store of wealth. That's why the median homeowner's net worth is many multiples of the median renter's, because we've wired tax, credit, and politics to make it so. Here's what actually happens inside that wiring. After World War II, the federal government built a homeownership escalator. FHA insurance standardized long-term, fixed-rate mortgages. The GI Bill put veterans into houses at scale. The mortgage interest deduction let higher earners deduct interest, effectively subsidizing larger loans and bidding up prices. Property tax deductions stacked on top. Most people think these are neutral benefits. They aren't. They tilt demand toward owning, leverage, and appreciation. Now layer in the cultural payoff. Buy early, ride the appreciation, retire on the equity. That narrative worked when starter homes were accessible and wages kept up. But when zoning wiped out small formats and land use rules locked in scarcity, the on-ramp broke. First-time buyers faced down payments chased by rising comps, while existing owners watch Zillow and smile. The system creates insiders and outsiders by design. Politically, that insider group dominates. Homeowners vote at higher rates than renters. They're older, more stable, and deeply tied to neighborhood outcomes. Any policy that flattens home price growth reads like a raid on their retirement plan. Tell a homeowner in a high-cost district that you plan to expand gentle density, stabilize rents, and cool appreciation, and they hear. Your property taxes won't fall, but your paper gains might. That's not an easy sell at a town hall or in a campaign. Everything changes when you add schools. Local services lean on property taxes, and school boundaries map to home values. Families buy into districts with higher test scores, and those scores reinforce prices. Appraisals depend on comparables, so existing high values justify the next one. If you flatten prices, local budgets worry about assessments. If you let prices run, inequity worsens. The feedback loop rewards scarcity and sameness. Finance doubles down on this bias. Mortgage underwriting, GSE guidelines, and appraisal standards love standardization and predictable comps. Banks hold loans or securitize them into MBS priced on assumptions of stable to rising values and low default correlations. House prices are collateral for the household sector, and by extension, a pillar in the broader credit system. A policy that signals we intend to curb appreciation doesn't just touch homeowners, it touches bond desks. Now this is important because it explains the reflexive pushback to Vienna-style cost rent. A permanent, large-scale, below-market stock reduces rent pressure and over time cools private market appreciation. That's the point. But in America, it triggers three immediate counterforces. First, incumbent homeowners mobilize, formally through HOAs and informally through local politics, to protect neighborhood character, which functions as a price protection proxy. Second, lenders and real estate interests warn about impacts on collateral values and local revenues. Third, policymakers eye the donor class, developers, brokers, and asset managers, who benefit from scarcity-driven returns. Most people think this is just NIMBY emotion. It's not just that. It's a rational defense of an asset regime we built. The mortgage interest deduction alone funnels billions annually, with the largest benefits accruing to higher-income owners. 1031 exchanges and capital gains exclusions on home sales sweeten the pot. Zoning enforces the supply side. Together, they create a religion. Your home must make you rich. Here's a micro-story that captures the psychology. A couple bought in 2013, stretched to get in, renovated the kitchen, and watched values climb. That equity isn't abstract. It's the college plan, the emergency fund, the buffer against layoffs. Propose a social housing push big enough to cool the local market, and they hear risk. They're not greedy. They're protecting the only cushion they have. That's why the politics are so hard. Once you understand that, you see why small reforms stall. Legalizing ADUs helps at the margins, but when accessory units start shifting comps or parking patterns, backlash rises. Upzoning near transit unlocks production, but the most valuable parcels are ringed with homeowners who vote, donate, and sue. Even renter-friendly cities run into the same wall. The tax base and bond ratings lean on assessed values. Flatten appreciation, and you invite budget fights. So what would it take to change the religion? You'd need a credible alternative wealth path for the middle class that doesn't depend on housing inflation. You'd need school funding that decouples from local assessments. You'd need mortgage and appraisal standards that don't punish diversity in housing types.